Hello and welcome into Off the Bench on a Thursday here in the beautiful city of Hamilton, Ohio. I'm Reed Mouse. I'll call it a scatterbrained show. We've got a scatterbrained show for you today because it feels like we've been talking almost exclusively about the Bengals. And obviously we've had some guests on. We have no guests today. There's some news about the Cincinnati Reds that I want to talk about. I want to give kind of midterms for the Bengals, some players and some roles on the team, about what my grades are here at the midpoint season. Just a spoiler alert for those that have looked at the syllabus, it's not good. It's not good. Not giving good grades out to the Cincinnati Bengals, but we'll get to that later on the show. And there's also some things that just in the world of sports that I haven't been able, because I've just been so chiseled in to the Cincinnati Bengals, that I haven't been able to give my takes out, like Penn Gaming and ESPN Bet. That partnership is ending. There's some news that came out about the Reds and their FanDuel has been extended for another year, so they'll get some money from their TV provider. Also, there's been a lot of news or a lot of discourse on the internet about the World Series ratings. Really good. They're fantastic. And people were talking about, is this indicative that baseball's in a better spot than basketball? I've got an opinion on that. We'll get to all of that later on in the show. Stone Shields, the producer extraordinaire. Stone, thank you so much for being here today. Are you ready to have a great show? Because little behind the scenes here, we were talking about just what we were going to break down and everything like that, and we are uber confident, and we'll be delivering a great show for you here from the 10 to 11 hour. Stone, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here on a Thursday. We got, a Thursday night football game tonight. Not great. I don't know if you'll tap into that or not. I'm still up in the air. We'll talk about kind of a bunch of different stuff here. I think you and we can always go for an hour really on the Bengals with our eyes closed and one arm tied behind our back, but we're not going to spend too much time. I know you want to do your report cards. We're going to do that. That's going to be great. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the Bengals there as well, but we're going to branch out to some other stuff here on a Thursday.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a fun show. We'll get to I want to pick Stone's brain on some of these opinions. Once again, we talk quite extensively before the show starts, and sometimes it feels like we rattle off some takes early, and we should do it live. But I like to pick Stone's brain, and I told him one of my takes. So Tom Brady cloned his dog. I have a really unique take about just kind of where medical science is going forward, and I think I don't know how Stone took my take, which is it's a wild take. I'll get to that later on. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was kind of the biggest news that happened in Cincinnati yesterday. And to call it news would be, I'd say, pretty lenient. But Kyle Schwarber obviously is a free agent. It's someone that a lot of Reds fans, including our very own Chatterbox Reds, which there's not a better place in the world to get Reds content than Chatterbox Reds. Nick Kirby, Trace Fowler, Craig Saint, all the guys that make that podcast up. They do such a fantastic job. And they circled Kyle Schwarber. And if you recall, we had Kirby on, and I asked him about Kyle Schwarber, and he said, at what point have the Reds ever been able to get a big marquee name like this? He's a hometown kid, kind of all of the circumstances that would need to be there are lining up for the Cincinnati Reds to make a serious push for Kyle Schwarber. And betting odds, which I feel like I talk about betting odds way too much, and this is a show where I'm going to be talking about sports gambling quite a bit because of the Penn Gaming stuff and whatnot. But betting odds come out that the Reds are the favorite at 2.5 to 1 to get Kyle Schwarber, which I think was shocking for a lot of people because Kyle Schwarber is one of the marquee names in the sport. And those names for 2 decades and even longer than that, and when they become free agents, they go to the marquee franchises, the teams like the New York Yankees, the teams like the Los Angeles Dodgers, the teams like the Philadelphia Phillies or the Chicago Cubs. Those are the teams that these big name players often go to. And here the Reds are as the betting favorite to get Kyle Schwarber. And we know why that is. It's because he grew up in Southwest Ohio. Obviously, the running joke is the pride of Middletown. And he still owns a home right around there. And he seems like a guy that, kind of wants to set up some roots in the town that he grows up in. And on top of that, we're not asking. He's not going to be eliciting a $300 million deal. He's a little older. He's pretty much a hitter only. He's going to be a designated hitter. He might, could play first base. You might throw him in the outfield. You're not going to get good play either place, but you can do that if you want. But he's essentially a 33-year-old designated hitter. And based off the way that the sport is going, that doesn't elicit $55 million a year. He's not Shohei Ohtani. Those are the reasons that Kyle Schwarber could come here to Cincinnati. And they made some moves. They declined a couple options. Guys like Austin Hayes, guys like Brent Suter, guys like Scott Barlow, to clear up some money. And I'll tell you guys right now that when the Kyle Schwarber sweepstakes start to really unfold and we hear guys like Jeff Passan, Joel Heyman, these guys that are going to be reporting on this news, you're going to frequently hear the Cincinnati Reds name brought up. And not as just a gimmick. They're going to be pushing heavy for this. He fits this team. He's a power bat. He's a bat that would already raise the floor and the ceiling of the Cincinnati Reds lineup. He's a left-handed hitter at Great American Ballpark, a home run hitter at Great American Ballpark to where he could put up serious numbers. He walks quite a bit. And as we mentioned, he's a designated hitter, and he plays positions that the Reds are in need of. A first base. I know Spencer Steer played there last year, but he can play first base. He can, in a pinch, play corner outfield. And when he does play corner outfield, even though he's been atrocious his entire career, it'd be at Great American Ballpark where the outfield is smaller. He doesn't have to cover as much ground. Playing Kyle Schwarber in a place like Comerica Park or Petco Park or one of the bigger outfields, that's not going to play well. But here at Great American Ballpark, where there's not even on top of that, it's a small outfit and there's no gimmicks like Fenway Park or Wrigley Field has, he could probably play it at least at a competent level. But they wouldn't be asking for that. They'd be asking him more often than not to be the designated hitter. Maybe play first. Maybe play a corner outfield spot. And, I guess I'll just throw this out here. I was talking to someone about this very thing, and someone that knows Kyle, and the rumor on the street is that, obviously Kyle has a home in this area, and the rumor on the street is that his wife says, hey, once our kids get into school, I'm not leaving. I'm not following you everywhere out. We're putting our stakes here, and his kids are 5 years old, and they're about to begin to school. So there is a lot of smoke coming up from this. It's not just, maybe the Reds can make a move at him, and you're expecting some, fairy tale, living in some fairy tale. And this is a serious thing that the Reds can do. And it'd be the biggest Reds acquisition since, King Griffey Jr.? It'd be, not as big. It's not to that level. He's not the star of the game in the same way that King Griffey Jr. was, but those same things, and I know it was a trade that got King Griffey here, then he got an extension. But those same things have kind of lined up. It's a guy from this hometown. Left-handed hitter, power hitter. Playing here at Great American Ballpark. Things are lining up for the Reds to make a serious push of this. Stone, I don't know if you I know you saw the odds. I know we talked about it. Did the odds that they are the betting favorite to get Kyle Schwarber, did that surprise you?
It did. Yeah, I thought it was fake when I saw it initially. As you laid out, there is the connection here to obviously, the city of Cincinnati, this particular area. But the money thing is the biggest question to me. And we were talking about this off the air. Like, if there's another team that's going to offer him $15, $20 million more than the Reds, like, how do you pass that up, right? If you want to end your career here at Cincinnati, as your swan song or whatever, that's fine. But, he's still, he's not, I wouldn't say he's in his prime. He's probably past his prime.
No, he's like 33 years old. So
you think prime still?
No, that's past
okay,
prime.
Yeah.
That is
okay,
past
yeah.
prime, yeah.
So,
but he can still get good years.
Right.
A power hitter.
But I feel like he can still be like that number one bat in a lineup. Like, I don't think this is at the point where you should take that big of a, cut when it comes to your salary. before signing with the team. So, I mean, obviously, I got my fingers crossed. That'd be great if he's here. We sit here and talk about, the Reds, they can't just stand pat. They have to do something to improve this roster. You sign Kyle Schwarber, let's run it back with everybody else. I'm in at that point because I think that's the type of acquisition that could really take you to another level. Could you beat the Dodgers? Probably not, but I think it could certainly make you a more competitive team. I think you can talk about competing with the Brewers for the top of the Central if you have that type of move. But the money thing is just my biggest question here. But I was shocked to see that the Reds were the number one as far as the odds.
I mean, you talk about a guy that would immediately raise the ceiling and raise the floor. He hit 187 home runs in 4 years with the Philadelphia Phillies. 187, and he'd be coming to a hitter-friendly ballpark and Great American Ballpark. I mean, outside of Yankee Stadium, there's very few places where a lefty can match better than Great American Ballpark in the entire Major League Baseball. And you do bring up a good point. How big's the money? Once again, this isn't a guy that's going to be eliciting $300 million. We're not going to be asking him to take a serious pay cut. But if the market is $25 million for Kyle Schwarber, the Reds can absolutely be part of this. I feel like so often when I talk baseball, I loop it back to my fandom, which is obviously the Chicago Cubs. And in 2015, they made a deal to go get John Lester. And John Lester took $165 million to sign with the Chicago Cubs and turned down a $145 million offer to play for the team that he had come up with, the Boston Red Sox. And, a lot of people were like, you're only doing it for the money. How dare you? You're going to a loser franchise. Won a World Series in the second year was there. But you're only doing it for the money. It's like, yeah, that's $20 million. I mean, you could say, what's the difference between 165 and what's between 165 and 145 million dollars? I'll tell you the difference. The difference is my grandkids being taken care of and my great grandkids being taken care of. That's the difference of $20 million. That can set your family into generational wealth. And you're already there at 145, but it's a whole nother level. Let's not scoff at $20 million. And it'll be interesting to see because I do believe that he'd be willing to keep his roots here in southwestern Ohio for a bit of a discount, but I don't think he's going to do it. If the Reds are offering $40 less million than the next offer. I don't think he's going to take that big of a discount. I think he might, and the Reds can make a competitive offer that'll be close to what teams, like I anticipate my Cubs will be in on it. I anticipate the New York Mets will be in on him. I saw on the other betting odds like the San Diego Padres and Texas Rangers. I can't imagine him moving out of the East and the Midwest. I can't imagine him going down to Texas and living there. Certainly can't imagine him going all the way West Coast to San Diego, even though both those places are absolutely lovely places to live. I can't imagine Schwarber moving to one of those places. So it would be interesting to see when the figures start coming out about how far off or how close the Cincinnati Reds are, and just keep your eye on this. I don't think this is some delusional Reds fans fantasy to where you're going, no, they never signed a Kyle Schwarber. I think the Reds, when the tweets start coming out, when the reports start coming out, when the podcasts start coming out on who Kyle Schwarber's meeting with, who he's talking to, you will consistently see the Cincinnati Reds in that stratosphere. Unless someone completely blows it up like the New York Mets and offers $100 million more than what the rest of the market is. Unless that happens, you will consistently see the Reds in the news when it comes to Kyle Schwarber. All right, there's something else I wanted to talk about. News came out today that Penn Gaming, the owners of ESPN Bet and formerly Barstool Sportsbook, are ending their partnership with ESPN. And it is incredible. There's two things I want to say about this. One, it shows how hard it is to find a footprint in an incredibly competitive market. And that's what sports books are. Sports gambling is an incredibly competitive market that is pretty much dominated by two sports books, FanDuel and DraftKings. That there are these companies that are blowing billions of dollars and making misstep after misstep, like Penn Gaming has now done twice, to get into this. So, quick recap, Penn Gaming bought Barstool Sports to eventually make Barstool Sportsbook, failed miserably, sold it back to Dave Portnoy, the owner, which, by the way, everyone's like, oh, Dave Portnoy's some great businessman, which he is. But I feel like this is more an indication on how poorly Penn Gaming is, because Penn Gaming wanted to get out of Barstool so that they can make this partnership with ESPN, the leader, the worldwide leader in sports, and they still they weren't able to get a foothold in the sports betting market. If you look at the market share, they had just 3% of the sports betting market share as compared to FanDuel and DraftKings, which sit around 40% respectively. The other one that came out surprising was Fanatics. Fanatics has shot up, and they're able to get into the sports book foothold. But it's just incredible, and we'll continue to see this in the world. We saw it in the 2000s with the internet bubble. We're seeing it kind of right now with AI, that all of these AI companies, all these companies are throwing billions and billions and billions of dollars because they know if they can get the right product, if they can get out there, they'll be trillionaires on the other side of it. We saw all these sports books, same thing. Once sports gambling became legal, it was a gold rush, and you had to get out there. And you had to, throw a lot of money, and there's gambles, pun intended. There's a lot of gambling that goes along in making these big bets. But at the end of it, we'll see billions and billions and billions of dollars thrown at sports books the same way we're seeing billions and trillions of dollars being thrown at AI. At the end of it, there'll probably be 2 to 3 companies that rule the roost. Same way that, all these internet companies bubbled up at the end of the 1990s, early 2000s, and it was the Amazons and the Googles that come out on top. There wasn't billions and billions of companies. There was really just 2 giant conglomerates. And it's really interesting to see what's going to unfold, and we'll see, like, BetMGM. That's been a gambling marquee name for as long as sports gambling's been legal in Nevada. BetMGM was kind of the name, and they can't get a foothold. And, WinBet and all these former great gambling Caesars cannot get a foothold because DraftKings and FanDuel just do it better. They just do it better. And I guess it's a reminder that though it feels like there's something shiny out there and there's all this money to get out there, maybe you don't always want to go head first like Penn Gaming tried 2 different times and failed epically. And I don't know how Penn Gaming comes back from this. I don't know how this comes back from this because they've now failed with Barstool. They tried the internet scene, and then they tried the kind of older scene with ESPN and kind of the established sports brand, and both failed epically. It was supposed to be a 10-year deal. It's done after about 3 years. And to most business insiders, that one was a pretty much DOA. It was a Hail Mary to get a foothold, and they just were unable to do this. You ever use ESPN Bet?
I did for like the free promos or whatever when it first came out, but then I stopped, and I've used other companies apart from ESPN Bet. But yeah, I didn't. It was a good idea, but I mean that kind of was going downhill from the jump there for them, and it kind of crashed and burned and blew up in their face.
I mean, like even look here in Ohio, all these different books. Betfred Sportsbook, who used to be the sponsor of Chatterbox Sports, and obviously was the name sponsor of the Cincinnati Bengals. They were gone in 2 years just because their app wasn't any good. Right, the user interface wasn't very good. I'm trying to think. PointsBet. There's all sorts of sports books that just.
How's Bet365 doing? Is that still a thing?
Bet365 is still used. I actually had a market share thing up earlier. What's wild is they currently hold about 3.4%. So they were doing better than ESPN Bet, which is wild because that app is an atrocious thing to use.
Yeah.
It's an atrocious thing to use. It'd also be interesting to see if there's any regulations, stricter regulations when it comes to sports gambling, especially with the news that came out a couple weeks ago in the NBA. If they'll start, limiting props, if they, can't bet on negative outcomes, if there's more states that, are refusing to get into this sports gambling world, it'll just be interesting. Or maybe it'll just be completely unleashed and, these other markets like these Kalishis and Poly Market and stuff like that, they'll start firing off at the hip and doing everything that they can to get into the market. All right. Let's do Bengals midterms. Stone, were you a good student in school?
I was for all leading up to high school. I definitely was, and then in high school, I found a way to get really good grades, but I don't know if I was the best student, if that makes sense.
So you were able to work the system to get good grades, which was the model of success, but
Yep.
you don't know if you were learning, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Hey, for what it's worth, I think that is learning. I think being able to work what you're supposed to be doing, do what's asked of you, and do it at a very high level, and do it with as little effort as possible. There's definitely something to be learned there. Spoiler alert: I wasn't a good student. Never really was. Always did well on tests, but never did well grades wise. I famously, my senior year of high school, graduated with 115 kids at Stephen T. Baden High School, and you get the end of the year, and they're like, oh, the class ranks come out, and they're like, everyone check your email for your class rank, and I check my email, and everyone in class is like, oh, I was 32, oh, I was 24, and I saw that mine started with a 1 and was triple digits, and I was like, I ain't telling anybody what my class rank was. So only about 14 kids had worse grades than me at Stephen T. But I think also the Cincinnati Bengals will not be very well up on the scorebook. We don't have lower thirds, but we'll dive right into Bengals midterms. We're going to fire at the hip. I'm going to say a name. I'm going to give a grade. You give a grade, and we'll talk about those grades. All right?
Got it. Let's do it.
All right. Bengals midterms, Jamar Chase. Starting off with an easy one, a good one. I give him an A, because how can you not give him an A? Had a slow, I don't think he was used a whole lot those first 2 weeks where the offense wasn't used a whole lot. But since Joe Flacco's been here, he's been as good as any wide receiver in the league. I think he's, second in the league in receiving yards. He's certainly got to be up near the top in catches. Jamar Chase, I give an A.
Yep, I agree. He's an A. Obviously, what he's done as a receiver this year with 3 different quarterbacks, absolutely unbelievable. The only thing holding him back from an A+, in my opinion, is some leadership stuff. You see him a little bit on the sideline, maybe a little bit pouty. You can tell he's definitely trying to, bite his tongue a little bit with the reporters after the game, which he's done for the most part a pretty good job. But, this is a guy that he has his own press conference now every week. Like, he's viewed as, their leader, really, especially with Joe Burrow being down. I think he's grown in that department as a leader, but that's the only thing holding him back from an A+. Maybe some better leadership characteristics he could show. But, he said it. He's never been in this spot before. He hates losing. That's one of the things about Jamar Chase. Some of these guys or whatever, they pout after the game, whatever. And then sometimes it's are they just acting like that because they feel like they need to act like that? You can tell that when Jamar Chase loses, it really drives him nuts. And he kind of struggles with handling it. And I don't think that's the end of the world, but that's the only thing holding him back from an A+, in my opinion.
Do you ever get scared about Jamar if things were to get really bad, which they're already headed in that direction? If things were to get really bad, that he'd make a lot of noise and want to get out of here?
I've worried about that a little bit, yeah. But as long as 9's here, I don't think that'll happen.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think on top of the worst thing that could happen to my fandom here in Cincinnati is that things get so bad that 9 and Uno ask out, and they'd go in unison, right? Think about the package we could get for trading them away if things were ever getting really, really bad. We're talking 7 draft picks and 2 all-pro player, an all-pro player somewhere else. It'd be interesting to see the kind of pool that those two would get. But Jamar certainly scares me that if things get bad, he will be a very loud presence in the locker room, which to some degree he deserves to be. He's the best in the league at his position, and he deserves it. All right, we'll stay on the offensive side. The offensive line. I think I'm going to go a little different than most people would give a grade here for the offensive line. I'd give them a B, and here's why. I'd actually want to give them a little bit better of a grade. I know they stunk for the first couple weeks, Jake Browning, and they're getting killed. I think, as we know, that was a lot to do with Jake Browning. But we've seen with Joe Flacco over the last few weeks that maybe just the style of play that Browning and even Burrow play with doesn't adhere itself tremendously to this offensive line. The first 2 games with Joe Flacco were against the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 really good defensive lines, and this offensive line held up. I give them a B. I want to give them a higher grade. Truly, I want to give them a higher grade. But when you heard when Joe Burrow gets hurt in 2 games, you don't get an A. But I'll give him a B.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that's noble that you're being more respectful towards them because I still think they're getting beat up a little bit, probably too much at this point. I'll go a little bit lower. I got them at C+ here at this point. As it relates to the rest of the National Football League, they're definitely not top tier. And candidly, it's not really close. And really, the guy that's supposed to be their best player on the offensive line, Orlando Brown Jr., is arguably the worst out of the 5 of them. So, there probably will be people that say that you're being too nice and even me being a little bit too nice there as well. But I think these past few games, and really since Joe Flacco stepped in, they found something there. And who would have thought that Jalen Rivers was going to be a starter this year? I think he deserves a lot of credit. We talked about all the whiffs that Duke Tobin has, and obviously the list is very long. May have found something in the 5th round in Jalen Rivers. This guy played tackle in college, and you started him out as a tackle, and that's like, oh, we need you to actually go inside, play guard, and you're going to start for us. And, he's found a way to stay in the lineup even with guys coming back and Lucas Patrick and Dalton Reisner, of course, being available. He's done a solid job. So, maybe he can be a guy for you along your offensive line going forward. Still lots of questions. Still the run game. Yeah, it's been better in recent weeks, but they're not the best run blockers. And that's not why they were brought here, right? They were brought here to be pass blockers and protect Joe Burrow. But I'm not as high on them, but I'll give them a C+. And I think if we would have had this conversation after week 2, we'd be giving them an F. And they've definitely improved.
No doubt.
I think Scott Peters deserves some credit for that as well.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I think also I'm grading this on the expectations of the line. And if this line can do what they've done the last few weeks, if they could just do that over the course of 17 games, I mean, that's an A+, because it's not the best line in the world, but we're not asking them to be the best line in the world. We're just asking for a little bit of time for our quarterback, because we know that with our wide receiving crew and really with the play calling that this team can do and a guy that can deliver the rock out there, this offense is borderline unstoppable. But now we're still in the offense. Chase Brown, I will knee-jerk reaction, give a C. I'll give a C. And I had really high expectations for Chase Brown going into this year. He's clearly not living up to those expectations, but obviously the run game's played better over the last few weeks. A big portion of why they stunk at the beginning of the year wasn't just Chase. It was also that offensive line, which I just gave a B. But Chase Brown, I still think, is talent, and also is proof that you shouldn't draft a running back super high, because he's a 5th round pick, and he's still pretty good. You draft running backs in the 3rd to 5th round, and you'll probably do just fine. I'll give him a C for this season.
I'll go C- on Chase Brown. I think, again, kind of similar to the offensive line. They've played a little bit better in recent weeks. I think certainly he has there as well. And I think part of it, as you pointed out, was our expectations were so high coming into the year. And for the record, when Joe Burrow's back, I think he will take that next step. I think he truly will be fully unlocked. What he did last year was incredible. I mean, you remember it started out as kind of 2 running backs there with Zach Moss. And Zach Moss, of course, got hurt, but then, Chase Brown was out there for darn near 100% of the snaps. And, sometimes you see in the NFL, if you have a season where you have that many carries and you're out on the field that much, might take a step back a little bit the following year. I think you're seeing that certainly in Philadelphia with Saquon Barkley right now. So maybe he took, maybe a little too much punishment last year, and that's contributing to this. But at the end of the day, I think it's because, Joe Burrow's not out there, and there's not that threat of, he's going to spread it around everywhere, and there's not going to be a ton of opportunities for him in the screen game. But I'm not out on Chase Brown by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's just a tough break. He lost his quarterback, and if Burrow's out there in 2026, I expect Brown to have a really good year. But I got C- right now.
Yeah, I've always thought very highly of Zach Taylor as a play caller, other than sometimes he takes way too long to get the plays in, which, by the way, was part of the reason that Evan McPherson hit it. I don't know if you saw that report that Evan McPherson hit while he was so short on that field goal because he had the wrong football, which is part of the reason that these kickers are finally able to drill it as far as they can, because they can have their own balls and they can use different balls, and it's not the same ball that the quarterbacks are using. But one thing that Zach Taylor has never quite been able to do effectively is do a running back by committee. Like when Joe Mixon was here, even with Samaje Perine, and Samaje Perine had some big moves, it was Joe Mixon taking like 95% of the snaps. Last year, we thought we were going to get kind of a running back by committee between Zach Moss and Chase Brown. Well, Chase Brown took about 95% of the snaps. This year, we're seeing a little bit more of that, at least in the last few weeks between Samaje and Chase Brown. We'll see if they can continue. Let's go to quarterbacks. Jake Browning, F. And I want to say this about Jake. I actually feel for Jake Browning. For as terrible as he played, and it was terrible, truly terrible, I feel bad for him because I truly believe that his play over that, 3-game period was so bad that it cost him his career. I believe that Jake Browning, based off what he did in 2023, sometimes that's all you need to see, is 1 5-6 game stretch where you play okay, play pretty good, which he did in 2023. He was on his way to be a backup quarterback for 15 years. And a big portion of being a backup quarterback is just kind of have the right vibes, right? Like you see these guys, Chad Henne. Chad Henne was terrible for the last 10 years of his career, but they just liked him in the quarterback room. So if you can continue to do that, but there is no one that watched Jake Browning play that 3-game series, 3 games, and thought that this guy can be someone who can win you a game over a 3-game stretch. Like if your quarterback's done for 3 weeks and you just need someone to fill in the gaps, Jake Browning, I truly believe, has cost his career because I think he could have been a backup quarterback for a decade plus, and now I wonder if he'll be out of the league within 2 years. Jake Browning F.
Couldn't agree more. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, to have the chance to go in there, be the quarterback of the Bengals with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, high-flying offense, and, he fell kind of flat on his face there. There's no other way that you could give any other grade other than an F. And, look, when you're a backup in this league, you pointed it out perfectly. If you go out there and you play a few games and you do your job, you're set. And living the backup quarterback life is a life that many people certainly envy. And he would have had it in the bag if he would have just – not even necessarily as good as 2023. If he could just keep things stable, score some points, he would have an opportunity to do this for a really long time. And I agree. I mean, I don't think there's any world where you want him to come back and be Burrow's backup next year.
No, they're going to draft. They're going to have to draft someone or sign someone.
Or, I mean, yes, but I'm also trying to do everything I can to make sure Flacco comes back for another year. That's a whole different conversation. But, I don't see how any team can trust him to be the backup. Maybe he'll get another chance. He seems like a fine guy. He's a competitor, feisty guy. I respect that. And I, for the most part, respect how he's handled this situation.
No doubt.
Very difficult, right? The whole city was coming for his neck, and now you have this guy that comes in and looks so good, and it's like, wow, that shows you really how bad Jake Browning is. But, F, no other way to put it. Yeah,
it's interesting because it's just it's hard not to like Jake Browning. He's got a spunk to him. Like, obviously, the clip that came out a couple of years ago, you should have never effing cut me, all that stuff, that's easy to root behind. But, man, oh, man, I think it's actually, I feel a little bad for him that it has happened this way because I do believe that he'll be out of this league sooner rather than later. But if you listen to guys, I know me and Stone listen to a lot of the same podcasts. They talk about Jake Browning and watching him play up at Washington. And like, this guy is an NFL quarterback, and he won't make it past training camp. And here he is, 5 years into the league and has started, almost a season's worth of games. So shout out to Jake Browning. Probably got further than a lot of people would have given him credit for, but I don't see his career continuing much longer beyond this year. And we'll go to the other quarterback, Joe Flacco, A+. You could not ask much, but when they made that trade, when they did, I'll be honest, I didn't have the highest expectations. It piqued my curiosity a little bit, but I could not even imagine that he'd be doing what he's doing right now. 11 touchdowns, 2 picks. One of the picks was on that final play of the game. He's turned the ball over only 3 times in his starts here in Cincinnati. It's been amazing. 470 yards, the best game of his career. We couldn't win it for him, but he's been everything you'd expect him for and more. And all it cost the Cincinnati Bengals was moving 50 picks back, 30 picks back in the draft in the 5th or 6th round. So, yeah, it's A+.
A+, no other way to put it. And let me be very clear here. The Bengals defense hasn't cost Joe Flacco from being one of the best stories in the NFL. Like, it's cost him being one of the best stories in the world of sports. Like, what he's been able to do at 40 years of age he got here and then he's playing at Lambeau Field a few days later. I mean, he's absolutely tearing it up. And, like, look, I think there's some of us that think, well, if Burrow was out there, maybe would have won that game. I think Detroit certainly probably would have won that. But these games with Flacco, like, could you really get any better even if Burrow's out there? I don't even really think you can, which is crazy that he's been able to come in here and do it. And then you start thinking about his career to this point. And it's like, well, I mean, imagine if he had some serious wide receivers. Like those Baltimore teams were good. But that was definitely teams that were built on run game and defense. He didn't always have a ton of weapons. Like, what if the Ravens, 10 or so years ago had guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and they were pushing the football down the field? I mean, he could have, put together like a Hall of Fame type career. I don't think that's, hyperbolic here at this point. But, this couldn't have worked out any better. And the fact that you have this production from your quarterback and from your offense and are still losing games, that's what drives us all nuts.
Zach Taylor, the play caller. I'm giving Zach Taylor a lot of credit as a play caller. Obviously, I've made the arguments that he gets the calls in too slow. But Zach Taylor, the play caller, I'm giving a B+. Listen, when we've seen Zach Taylor over the course of his career be a high-potent offense with 3 different quarterbacks now, Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco, and Jake Browning in 2023, and I know he's got a lot of weapons to work with, a lot of toys, but it's pretty clear that he can call plays at a high level. And I know we get frustrated all the time. Play calling, I'm not doing the take again, but it drives me nuts as a fan that's like the number one thing that people always complain about. But I give him a B+ this season because I think, they're scoring 40 points a game, brother. I don't know how you could – he really deserves an A, but I'll give him a B+ just because they're 3-6.
Yeah, B+. I think he could have done a lot better with Jake Browning, put Jake Browning in some better spots, and I definitely think he's reaping the benefits of Joe Flacco being unbelievable. But, again, we're talking about play caller right now.
Correct.
Not head coach. That's coming.
That is coming.
And we got different answers.
We do got
on
different
that.
answers.
But, yeah, how can you complain about the offense the past 3 weeks? You can't.
Correct.
Right? Now, early on in the year, that's the problem. Now, the Bengals won those games against Jacksonville and Cleveland, and I think we were all just like, finally, you won some games in September here. But I've got some concerns there with, they kind of got lucky in both of those games. But for whatever reason, Zach gets off to a slow start, and then he gets into the season, and then he's dialing it up. And, look, if Flacco's healthy, I expect the offense to be good the rest of the way. We'll see if, Flacco, how he looks with the injury. But as a play caller, yeah, we'll give him B+. I would like to see a little bit more in the run game. We've seen that the past couple of weeks. Would like to see a little bit more creativity. But when you're scoring 80 points the past 2 weeks, you can't really complain about the offense.
Right, yeah, that's the creativity thing. Like, you watch a Ben Johnson game, you're like, why can't we do that? I was like, I don't know, we're scoring 40 points the way that we're doing it. So maybe it's working. Like, let's not fix what isn't broken. There's one thing that drives me nuts. You said, how can you complain about this offense at all? Over the past 2 weeks, this drove me nuts. People that are complaining that Mitchell Tinsley needs to take Andre Yoshivas' snaps away. If you're spending time, breath, you only got so much time in this world. You only get so many breaths. And if you're wasting some of your breaths talking about how the Bengals offense needs to play Mitchell Tinsley over Andre Yoshivas when they've scored 40 points the last couple weeks, then I don't know what to tell you, brother. You're worried about the wrong things. There's 50 problems with this Cincinnati Bengals team. And if you're worried about Andre Yoshivas and Mitchell Tinsley, you're worried about the wrong things. That ain't top 50 in the Bengals' problems right now. They scored 42 points and 38 the week before. It's in 33 the week before. Like, this offense is firing on all cylinders. When we throw Mitchell Tinsley out there, we're scoring 60. Get out of here. Get out of Dodge. All right, let's go to the defensive side where it's going to be a lot more fun. Shamar Stewart, baby. First round pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. I give him an F because he sucks. And he has not shown me even slightly that he is a professional football player. You can take that RAS score and shove it where the sun don't shine. When you're getting blocked, how big is Shamar Stewart? 6'7", 6'6"? He's huge, right? I don't know his exact.
That tall, but yeah,
he's a big dude, athletic dude. When he's getting blocked by a 5'10", 5'11" wide receiver, you cannot be taken serious in this league. F, F minus, 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 F. Shamar Stewart.
F. No. Cut him. Done.
Cut
Bust.
him.
I'm ready to move on from you. Swung and you missed big time, and he is huge. 6'5", 267 is what I'm looking at right here on the computer. Again, if you're going to go out there and be a top-line draft pick and not produce, you better check off the other boxes. You better sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to get better each and every week. You better not throw your teammates under the bus. You better not talk to the media after the game. You better not get in a massive contract dispute with the organization before you played a singular down of defense. All right. He's done everything wrong to this point. He's one of the worst picks in recent memory, not just for this franchise, but in NFL history. And, I am out on Shamar Stewart. I get he's played a handful of games. Right. This thing ain't getting better. We all hope he does, but he's not made of the right stuff, and I'm totally out on him.
No, I don't have too much to say about the other edge rusher that we drafted in the first round. Miles Murphy, also an F, also terrible. This pass rush is an abomination, and I'm tired of watching it. Miles Murphy, F.
Yeah, I think F. We've saw this coming, and it was probably confirmed a while ago, but it's definitely confirmed here at this point. Another swing and a miss. Miles Murphy, F.
Demetrius Knight, worst graded linebacker in the NFL. I'm going to give a D-. I ain't going to give him an F. Not going to fail him because I have seen flashes of something okay. Like, I have seen him make a play before. I have seen him do positive things. It isn't just straight negativity like it is for Shamar Stewart and even Miles Murphy. And he's so young. I have confidence that Demetrius Knight will be a starting level linebacker in this league. But at this point, you can't give him a good grade because he's the worst graded PFF linebacker in the National Football League. I'll give him a D-, and he's right on the brink of failing.
Yep, I think the only thing that's preventing him from getting the F is that he seems like he's made of the right stuff. You see some leadership stuff from him. You see some accountability from him. He's talking to the media after bad performances. That is the only thing that's holding on to him not having an F. I agree with you. I got D- here for Demetrius Knight Jr. And unfortunately for him, is it as fair necessarily to be thrown in and said, oh, we need you to be the guy as a rookie? Right. I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but he is a second-round pick. Do I have optimism he can turn it around? I don't know. I mean, more optimism than Shamar Stewart.
Right.
But, I agree with you. D-. It's one of the reasons why your defense is so bad.
I do truly think that Demetrius Knight, when all is said and done, he will be a starting level linebacker. Do I think he'll be good? I don't know about that, but I think he will. You'll notice that he's professional level, unlike I'm losing all confidence that Shamar Stewart or Miles Murphy will ever be professional level edge rushers. We'll go to the other linebacker, Barrett Carter, same thing. He's only started a few games now. D, on the brink. I mean, we'll give it at the end of the season, but it could easily be an F come the end of the year. But D, just because you do see him make a play here or two. Not many of them. Too many missed tackles for linebackers. But, I mean, he's a fourth-round pick. D.
Yep, D-. Again, maybe not fair that you ask your fourth-rounder to come in here and be that guy right away. I think we all know that Logan Wilson, despite his struggles, is still better than him, and he wasn't playing. So they're kind of going all in here on Barrett Carter. Hopefully he can figure it out. Again, he seems like he's made it the right stuff from a leadership perspective, and he was a great leader at Clemson in college. But as far as on-field performance, those linebackers that you drafted, they're not quick, they're not fast, they're not strong, they can't tackle, they're not good in the run game. Not much to hang your hat on here at this point.
All right, let's do this a little quicker now. DJ Turner, A.
B.
Ooh, B. Why?
I think he had a stretch of obviously it's like, oh, this guy looks really, really good. I also think he looks really, really good because everybody else on the defense is really, really bad. But let's be very clear here. This is a guy that's been benched several times. This is a guy that got beat out by Dax Hill at one point because Dax Hill was switching from a safety and DJ Turner was still at corner and he got beat out. And then later, of course, had to come back in. So I've got some hope with DJ Turner, but I'm just not going to be giving out A's here on the defensive side. I'm not going to make a habit of that.
That's fair. Fair enough. You're a tougher teacher than I am. We'll go back. Dax Hill very quickly. I got him at a C+.
Yep, C+.
All right. The safety room as a whole, F. All right. Al Golden in his first 9 games as the defensive coordinator. I don't know. It could be anything other than an F.
Correct. F.
All right. Yeah, you don't deserve anything better than an F because this team is trending to be the worst team in the history of the National Football League. It's trending in that direction. And when you bench players like Logan Wilson, who maybe deserve to be benched, but he's a captain, and then we're trading him away, and all these, it's just an F. It's just an F. And the final one is Zach Taylor, the head coach. We gave him good grades as Zach Taylor, the play caller. Zach Taylor, the head coach, I am giving a D minus.
Yeah.
Not a full-blown F, a D minus, because one side of this ball, really good. But they're still 3-6 and have been embarrassed in 6 of 7 games. So D minus.
I had D. Yep. Can't be. I mean, it's on pace for a historically, hilariously bad defense. One of the worst of all time. Could potentially be the worst of all time. He's the head coach. That's unacceptable. The only thing preventing him from having an F is the offense has been so good, number one. And as of now, as we sit here on November 6th, the team is still together for the most part. Obviously, it's not perfectly together, but they haven't completely fallen apart yet. Give him a little credit for that, but I don't think you can have him any better than a D.
My biggest hope, truly is my biggest hope regarding this season, is that when we get to the offseason of this year, that we are at least doing something fun, like talking about who the head coach is going to be for a week or two. Like, that would at least be fun, and we're not just talking about Trey Hendrickson for 5 months. I mean, I know they would get a head coach within like 2 weeks after firing Zach Taylor, but it'd at least make for good content to be talking about who could the Bengals go and get to be their head coach. And then, of course, it'll be some running backs coach from the St. Louis Battlehawks or someone that we just could not foresee happening. But beside the point, I did want to talk about a few other things here in the worldwide of sports. We did our Bengals. We did our Reds. I'm just kind of catching up on some of these stories that I only get an hour a day, and just kind of firing some opinions on what's going on in the world of sports. There was a big what to do about the ratings that the World Series got, and it was a World Series one for the record books. It was a truly great World Series, and I think they had the best ratings that they've had in over 30 years. And I have 2 takes on this. One, it's that whether you guys like it or not, whether you guys want to accept this or not, big brands being good is good for the sport. College football is better when Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame are good. The NBA is better when the Lakers and the Knicks are good. The NFL is the only league that, I mean, they could throw out rum-dums out there and they could be good and, we'll fire. Like, the best teams in the league right now are from Buffalo and Kansas City, and the league's still firing. But even then, dynasties are what kind of rule the roost. Like, the Patriots were good, and that's what kind of led to the Bengals and the Cowboys. And then now we have the Kansas City Chiefs, and it continues. The Dodgers being good and the Yankees being good and the Cubs making the postseason this year, that's good for the sport. There's no doubt about it. That's going to drive up interest towards baseball across the board, even for these small markets like here in Cincinnati. It drives up interest. Now, we can argue about whether the Dodgers winning back-to-back World Series and the competitive balance issue, that's a whole other conversation. But in terms of just the organization, the company, or the league making money, Major League Baseball wants the Dodgers to be really good. The other take I saw a lot of people arguing, because that's what we do on the internet, arguing about baseball versus basketball, because the baseball World Series had much higher ratings than the NBA, which apparently is proof that baseball is in a much better spot than the NBA, which I do actually think that baseball might be in a better spot than the NBA. But if you're looking at the ratings for the World Series as opposed to the ratings of the NBA Finals, when the ratings for the World Series feature the second biggest brand in the sport, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and a team that represents an entire nation in the Toronto Blue Jays, versus the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, that's not a real fair fight there. Like, we'll see if it was the Lakers versus the Bulls, what kind of a ratings bonanza that'd be. We'd see what it's like. So just because Game 7 of the World Series had 20 million more followers or 20 million more watchers than the final game of the NBA Finals doesn't indicate that baseball's in a much better spot than basketball, because it wasn't fair. It's not a fair fight to the Thunder and the Pacers versus the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. It would be like, we'll see what the World Series ratings would be like if the Mariners played the Rockies. I mean, a couple years ago, we had the Diamondbacks versus the Rangers, and the Rangers represent Dallas, which is, the third biggest media market in the country? I don't think Houston's bigger. But one of the biggest media markets in the country. So, that conversation seemed nonsensical to me. But I do believe that, actually, I don't believe it. It's a state of fact that the Dodgers and the Yankees being good drives up profits for the rest of the league for Major League Baseball. It just does. It really does. We can argue about the competitive balance issue, which is a fair argument to have, and it's another separate conversation to have. But it's undoubtedly just the way that college football needs Ohio State and Alabama and Notre Dame and Michigan and all these teams to be really good for the brand, for the sport, for the collection. Baseball needs the Dodgers and the Yankees. It's just stinks, but that's the kind of the way it is. It's kind of the way it is. The Dodgers being good will put more money in the pocket of the Cincinnati Reds. Will. Some other things I wanted to get to. Oh, I teased this at the top of the show. Tom Brady cloned his dog.
Yes.
Stone, did you have an opinion on this?
Yes, talked about it on yesterday's show. I didn't spend a ton of time on it, but look, Tom Brady, and we can have this conversation a different day on the show. I used to always say he was not the GOAT. And I could still make that argument if I wanted to.
Who do you
I don't do it anymore. I was always a Peyton Manning guy. I always said it was him. We don't need to have this full discussion now.
Fair.
But once he went to Tampa and got it, I surrendered. I waved the white flag, and I was like, all right, fine. We'll give him the Super Bowl. So tremendous quarterback, tremendous player. He's always been a little weird, right? He's always seemed a little weird to me, and this wasn't surprising at all. And look, I'm a dog person, right? I lost my childhood dog several years ago. It was very tough. It's very emotional, right? You see pictures, you still get sad to this day. But would I want to clone him and see a different dog that looks identical to him? No, that's weird. That's so weird.
Yeah, it's so you and I listened to a podcast together, and he was talking about this, the podcaster, and he was like, cloning a dog would be really. I have 2 dogs that I love dearly. If I cloned them and it looks the exact same, it would make me uneasy because I would know deep down that that's not the same dog. Like, I would know that that's not my Rizzo. That's not my Rookie. Like, they look the same, but they're not acting the same. They do something differently, and it's not the same. As a Roman Catholic, I'm not allowed to believe that dogs have souls, but they certainly have personalities. And the personality wouldn't be the same, and it would just be really weird. But it's pretty clear that Tom Brady's someone who is hyper obsessed with his health, reversing the age, and it's part of the reason that he was able to be a quarterback in this league till he was in his mid-40s, was because of how meticulous he was about his health. I don't think I'm going off the beaten path here when I say that Tom Brady, the reason he's investing, and he invested in this company that cloned his dog. He has money in this company. I don't think I'm going off the beaten path here that Tom Brady's hoping that there's some major medical advancements by the time he gets into his 70s, or that he can hold this out longer, that he might be able to really lengthen out his age, his life. He's living pretty good right now. He's making a lot of money. He's young, handsome. He's single. I guess he's not young. He's almost in his 50s. But he's single, making a lot of money. He's living a pretty good life. He probably wants to strengthen that out as long as possible. And I told this take to Stone. And he looked at me about as wide-eyed as he's ever looked at me. We always think about what the world would be like in 50 years from now. Like, if we looked at, even 10 years ago, we look at the way it is now with AI and all this stuff, we wouldn't be able to see it. Everything that your expectations are always subverted into something different. But we always go like, what is the world going to be like in 50 years? What's the world going to be like in 100 years? I believe, this is the take that got his wide out. I believe that in 100 years, medical advancement would be able to cure cancer, would be able to cure aging. I think that the process in which aging is, which is just the deterioration of your cells not being able to replicate themselves over and over again, that's what aging is. You hit a heart, you start falling off a cliff when it starts going downhill after your late 20s, then you hit 40s and it goes really off, then it hits in your 60s, and the same cells that replicate every single day, the DNA that creates those cells, they start getting slower and slower, which is why it takes longer to heal. It's why your bone health isn't as good. Like, it's just, that's what aging is. And I think that in 100 years, we will solve that. Now, that opens a whole nother can of worms. No, I don't think people are going to live forever. You get in a car accident and you die. That still happens. Yeah, you can get sick with some serious ailment and you can die still. But it raises some serious quandaries on, even if we do prevent aging, if we cure aging, do we let it happen? Like, are we just going to have a group of 35-year-olds? Like, there's just going to be 10 billion people that look 35 years old for the rest of their life, and really they're 160? It's interesting. I don't know if we'll have to deal with it in my lifetime, but that was the take that Stone. Don't take a gummy and think about that. Stone Shield Show coming up. He's got a guest coming on here. Talking UC Bearcats.
Yep.
So Stone, have a good show. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Appreciate you.
See you guys.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show here on a Thursday. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. The Bengals, of course, on bye this week, so no pain for Cincinnati Bengals fans this week at least, and they will return to action the following week where they head up to Pittsburgh, Acrisure Stadium, take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think we'll all have a close eye on that game on Sunday night, Steelers and the Chargers. I think a lot of people were like, here are the Steelers, here they go. They're just going to fall back down to earth and be this mediocre football team around 500, and then they kind of surprised a lot of people and knock off the Indianapolis Colts last week at home. Aaron Rodgers, say what you want about him. He's playing at a high level. The defense settled down. They played their best game of the year last week, and all of us Bengals fans are going to be watching that game rather anxiously. Obviously, it feels like the Bengals are out of the playoffs here at this point, but if Pittsburgh continues to win, they definitely will be eliminated sooner rather than later, so that's a good game. We'll talk about that more in depth tomorrow on tomorrow's show as we kind of do our weekend previews. We'll have our college football weekend preview tomorrow there as well. Lots of good college football games as always. I got my eye on Iowa and Oregon tomorrow, 3:30. Oregon goes on the road. I think they got disrespected maybe a little bit with the first college football playoff rankings that came out a couple of nights ago. Had them at number 9. I'm sure Dan Lanning will use that as some fuel to fire up his team. But on the road at Kinnick, Iowa, nobody really talking about him, but this is the best Kirk Ferentz team we've seen in a couple of years now. That place is going to be rocking. That place is a very difficult place to play, so we'll preview that game on tomorrow's show. Keep an eye out on the Ducks potentially being on upset alert. Last I looked, that game was a 6.5-point spread in favor of Oregon. So tomorrow we'll do that. We'll do our best bets of the weekend. Hand up, accountability. 0-5 week last week. Not good. Not good. Not happy about it. Not proud of it. Not pleased. But we'll bounce back tomorrow. Hopefully have some winning plays for our best bets of the weekend. That's on tomorrow's show. But coming up on today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about Kyle Schwarber and the Cincinnati Reds, right? You know, Trace Fowler did this on Off the Bench. It was probably over a month ago. Kind of went on this whole, rant, I guess, about the Reds potentially bringing in Kyle Schwarber, and it's becoming a little bit more real. There was some betting odds that came out. We posted about that on our Chatterbox Sports Twitter, and the Reds are the top team if you were to move on and go somewhere else to land Kyle Schwarber. How accurate is that? I don't know, but we'll spend some time talking about Schwarber. I think that is a move right there. If you're the Cincinnati Reds, that puts you in contention, right, if you make that kind of a move like that. I have my questions, obviously, but, you know, there's been a little bit of smoke around Schwarber potentially joining the Redlegs. We'll talk about that. Hudson Klauke will join us in about 10 minutes. We'll talk UC Bearcat hoops. They do this every year to me. They start out with the non-conference, and, you know, they look good, and you got guys who are like, oh, he's good, he's good, he's good. Are they going to be able to, you know, withstand this, play well? They actually had a couple of tough non-conference games. It's always been kind of the knock on Wes Miller. It's like, okay, like you think you're fine, but you haven't really played anybody, and then it's a cross-down shootout. Next thing you know, and then it's like, well, if you lose that game, then you go into Big 12 play, and it could get troublesome for you rather quickly. But they're going to get tested. Dayton coming up soon. Louisville also on the schedule. Georgia, I believe, there as well. Big-time school, not necessarily a big-time basketball program. But we'll see. This UC team, I think plenty of reason to be optimistic, and we'll talk with Hudson about that coming up here shortly. Matt LaFleur, there's been some dialogue out there about him potentially being on the hot seat. I think it's ridiculous. I'll talk about that. I get it. You've lost to Cleveland. You tied Dallas. You lost to Carolina. That can't happen. But I think that would be a massive mistake if the Packers were to move off Matt LaFleur. Also, I hate doing this time of year. I'll love doing this in a couple of months. But The Athletic dropped the mock draft. And we're not going to break down the whole mock draft or whatever. But we are going to talk about who Cincinnati was mocked towards as a player that they selected in the draft. And we'll also talk about who they had at number 1 overall. And I don't think it necessarily is the wrong person. We'll spend some time talking about that. Also, Kyler Murray placed on IR for the Arizona Cardinals. Don't get it twisted. He's been benched. And I wouldn't expect the Cardinals to come out there and say, hey, yeah, we're benching Kyler. That wouldn't really be a great idea. If there was, you could even hope or pray that a team could potentially want to trade for him. So we'll round out today's show with that conversation. Hudson Klauke coming up here in a few minutes. Let's talk Kyle Schwarber. The odds, I think it was, I forget, Bet Online maybe came out with these odds. And it was, whoa, Cincinnati is at the top. Now, to be clear here, as you're working through these odds, there were several teams up there at the top. The Cubs were up there. The Mets were certainly up there as well. It wasn't like the Reds were such a significant odd gambling line compared to the other teams, right? There was a lot of teams with some good odds, but seeing Cincinnati jump out there at number 1, it piques your interest a little bit. Makes you a little bit curious, right? Because we sat here a couple of weeks ago and we fantasized about, Schwarber potentially being a Cincinnati Red, but we were all kind of like, yeah, that's just a dream. That's a pipe dream. Ain't no way that's going to happen. Then you see this and you're like, okay, And then you hear some rumblings. Reed brought up the point on off the bench that he's heard that, Kyle Schwarber's wife, she wants to be here in Cincinnati when it's time for their kids to go to school. And that's coming up. His kid are like 5 years old here. I think the oldest one is. So, she's going to want to be home. Again, this is according to Reed, something that he heard. So it's like, okay, that's something there. That's something you hear about the Cincinnati Reds, of course, being his childhood team. He played growing up here. He went to Middletown High School down the road from here in Hamilton, playing the same conference, obviously, the GMC. And it's like, okay, a left-handed power bat, that is exactly what you need. And you pair it with the fact that he is from Cincinnati and reportedly wants to come home and has some interest here, lives here at parts during the offseason. And we'll see if ultimately anything can happen. But I made this point a couple of weeks ago. When you talk about the Cincinnati Reds, I sit here and I'm like, last season was a success. It was 100% a success. Some people disagree with that. I think that's wrong. I think that's incorrect. But you can't just be in a spot where it's like, oh, last season was a success. We'll do it again, and we'll be able to be a little bit better in the postseason. No, you have to make adjustments to your roster. You have to add. You got to work in, some adjustments that need to be made as far as your rotation goes, as far as your bullpen goes. Certainly, not going to have all those guys back. Need to improve in those areas. Yeah, you got 3 starters that you feel really good about. Probably 4 actually that you feel really good about. Probably could use another starter, and there's a lot that goes into that. And obviously, the offense was what we were complaining about for the duration of the season for the Cincinnati Reds, from power and just getting on base and getting hits. And that needs to be addressed here this offseason. Tito Francona said that. He said we need more depth, right? When you lost Austin Hayes early in the year, yeah, you got off to a great tear of a start. Then you lost him. It's like nobody really could step up. And if you had some injuries and you're without guys, you didn't have depth necessarily to back them up. And I think that's something Cincinnati certainly needs. But you make this signing, you bring Kyle Schwarber here to Cincinnati, I think that's the type of signing where it's like, let's go, right? I'm not going to sit here and say World Series favorite, but I'm going to sit here and say we'll compete with Milwaukee, right? You stay healthy with the guys that you have. You bring in Kyle Schwarber to the top of your lineup as a power bat. Let's go, right? Kyle Schwarber's here in Cincinnati. He's putting multiple baseballs in the river, multiple baseballs in the river, the Ohio River, the big river behind the GABP. Yeah, he's putting balls in there, and that's not hyperbolic. Like, this guy absolutely mashes baseballs. Now, the question, of course, is would he, perhaps go to Cincinnati at this stage of his career? He's past his prime, but he still has 2, 3, 4 really good seasons ahead of him where he's going to hit 50 nukes, right? Or at least 40-plus nukes, but probably 50 nukes, to be honest with you. And, I think he could be in a spot where he gets another big-time contract here for the next 2-3 years. And then after that says, all right, maybe I'll retire with the Cincinnati Reds and kind of end your career that way. I think that definitely will happen. I think Kyle Schwarber will play for the Reds at some point. But at this spot in his career, when he can go out there and a team like the Mets or a team like the Cubs can pay him a ton of money, I don't think Cincinnati can really do that. Would you take a pay cut to come here at this stage? I don't know, right? People sit there and they say, well, you've made, however much money Kyle Schwarber's made, I don't know in front of me, but it's a lot. It's millions and millions of dollars. If you, take $20 million less than that, what's the big deal? Well, that's $20 million, right? That's something that impacts your great-grandchildren down the line. So it would be hard for me. It would be hard for most people to, say no to that. I mean, look, you've worked your whole life to play baseball. You're really good at baseball. You're really good at hitting the baseball. And if a team is going to want to pay you so much more than another team, it would be hard to pass that up, even if the other side of that is coming home to play for Cincinnati. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. You did this your whole life, and you got a team that wants to pay you a ton of money. You're going to say no to that just to play for the Cincinnati Redlegs? Well, by the way, you could just wait a few years and then end your career with the Cincinnati Redlegs. But, we all sit here, we hope, we fantasize, we dream. But, when you see these odds come out, it makes you a little bit more optimistic that this could potentially happen. And, they laid out their budget, obviously, the Cincinnati Reds recently. Brad Metter and Nick Krall came out and said, yeah, it's going to be pretty much exactly what you were dealing with last year, right? It's not going to be much of a difference as far as payroll goes. And, look, that's going to be what you're dealing with on a year-in, year-out basis for this team. It's a small market franchise in the Cincinnati Reds. You're never going to go out there and spend $100+ million in free agency. You have to hit on those diamond in the rough type guys. Keegan Thompson signed him a couple of days ago. They clearly like him. They're signing him here on early November. They feel like they see something. Maybe he could be a diamond in the rough type guy for you. Could you perhaps go out there and go all in on one guy? I think that is a possibility. If you think the roster that you have in place right now is just missing one huge bat that could potentially get you over the hump, which in my opinion, that's what I think, right? I think Kyle Schwarber on this team puts you in contention to win the Central, to go out there and compete with Milwaukee, right? And then, perhaps maybe not have to play in the wild card round. How crazy would that be? I don't know about that. But I think they put you in a spot where you get Kyle Schwarber. Let's go. Let's go win the Central. I think that is something that is definitely a possibility here for you at this point, and that is something that the Reds are going to have to consider. They're going to have to do their due diligence, and I think a lot of people, their ears perked up a little bit when they saw this report there about the gambling lines. All right, it is time to talk some UC Bearcats here on the show. We got our guy here from Chatterbox Bearcats. Hudson Klauke is joining us. And Hudson, can you hear me? I appreciate you stopping by. You got me?
I got you, man. What's going on?
Nothing much, man. I appreciate you making some time. Shot you a text last night, and you were free, and you were hopping on the show here, and we certainly appreciate you for that. We'll talk a little bit about football at the end of this segment, but I want to start with basketball. They do this to me every year, seemingly, where they get the non-conference going, and they're playing lesser opponents, and they go out there and they kind of give you reason to be really, really optimistic. And seeing that game against Western Carolina a couple of days ago, I was kind of like, oh, here we go. I'm kind of back on board. Was it perfect by any stretch? Absolutely not. You turn the ball over too many times. You got out-rebounded by that team. Lots of concerns, and we'll get to that in a second. But I want to start with this freshman, Sean Abayev. Most points by a freshman in a debut since Sean Kilpatrick. All Bearcat fans out there, pretty good player in Sean Kilpatrick. I did not expect him to look like that. I know he had gotten a lot of hype, but he looked really, really good out there. Again, lesser competition, a lesser opponent, but is this something he can build off of? Do you look at him as a threat here for this team to be, one of their best players?
I think he's going to have to be, at least from the offensive end. And you saw that, and granted, he's playing the guards on Western Carolina. Like, the mismatch was just ridiculous. Right. But you can see, he's got a really nice three-point shot. He does a little bit of everything on the offensive side. It's a lot of iso ball, which is fine in the construct of this offense. Like, it's a perfect thing to have for Wes Miller. We have not had that in a long time, a guy that at that size can go get his own shot, really since Landers Nolly probably. And that might have been the best Wes Miller team we've seen, which there hasn't been many good Wes Miller teams so far. So to have him with a complement of these other guys that aren't super heliocentric and need the basketball in their hands, and he's kind of that late second get-out-of-jail-free card. And we saw it so far. He's going to – I've said this a couple of times. He's going to make some shots or shoot some shots where everyone's going to go, what the hell are you doing, man? Yeah. But the guy's super confident. You can tell that he's that 5-star next to his name. He earned it. And you're already seeing his name get higher and higher on these mock drafts after, one game against Western Carolina. We'll see what happens. But I think he's the real deal, man. It's hard to say otherwise.
And pairing with him, you got Baba Miller, who, again, there was some hype coming in. You saw what he could do. He's got more experience, obviously. Was at FAU last year, was a really good player. That was a big hit in the portal for West. And he's a guy that you look at and say, well, he can get to the rim. He can shoot it. He can defend. He's very versatile as far as the entirety of his game goes. And I look at him, I say, I think this guy could play in the NBA. I think he could be a really good player. What's your take on Baba Miller and his performance, another guy for the Cats that found their way in double figures in the first game?
Yeah, he was awesome. He looks like our most complete player. You can see he's like a finished product. He's a senior. He's been around for a while. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like he could play for the Brooklyn Nets right now after that first game. The guy is super talented. He just looks like an NBA player, and he can, get to the rack. He can rebound. He's been our leading rebounder, and I know we're talking exhibitions and just one game so far, but he's clearly going to be our leading rebounder. I think he's awesome, man. The Lily and Niehaus, who do our Chatterbox Bearcats midweek show, check it out. Yeah. They're already referring to Baba Miller, Sean Abayev, and Sham as the big three. Yeah. There's some speculation. This is similar to, the LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh so far, one game into the season. But man, those guys with their length, it's been a while since we've had a team that is just so long like we are right now. And Baba Miller is obviously a big part of that.
Despite the fact it was a big win, you kind of let them get back in the game a little bit in the second half. Never really in jeopardy of losing that game. But I think one thing you could point to certainly is the turnovers, one, and, of course, getting out-rebounded by a team that's a lot smaller than you there as well. I think you pointed out after the game they kind of were just able to rely on their athleticism, the Bearcats, and they kind of got away with some stuff just because they have superior athletes. What's your concern level as you begin to have some more difficult games here? Dayton obviously on the horizon with, maybe the physicality and just the rebounding ability of this team.
Yeah, it's the rebounding. I'm just looking at it. Western Carolina had 14 offensive boards. If you do that against, Texas Tech, for example, you're going to get blown out, especially when you're playing road games. That is definitely the number one concern. And it's funny because I just mentioned how lengthy and big this team is. It just shouldn't be happening. We have a 7'2" center that's on a bunch of NBA draft boards as well, and Mustafa Cham. He needs to be all over the glass. So that's probably my biggest concern with Jalen Haynes. He was a little bit bigger body that looks like he's going to be out at least for extended time. So that's my number one concern. I'm sure Wes is going to be on him. But that was a problem that lingered last year too. So I don't know if it's a philosophy or what, but you got to get your hands on some rebounds, or I think it's going to be a struggle against the power competition.
From a non-conference perspective, I feel like in recent years where it's like, okay, UC's starting out good, but they're not playing anybody, and you don't really know, and then it's crosstown shootout time, and you kind of just got your fingers crossed. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. Obviously, you had the Dayton game, and that's coming up there as well. Also, we'll play Louisville. Just your thoughts on kind of the non-conference, because it's gotten a little bit stronger here this year. I believe Georgia's in there as well.
Yeah, and we got Clemson too.
Yeah.
So we got a number of games. That's a little bit later, closer to conference play. But, playing Dayton on Tuesday, our third game, that's awesome just to get this thing going. Because, we've done the song and dance where we play these terrible teams and, we're talking Final Fours already. Let's play some real competition. Let's see where we're at. Dayton, I don't think they're supposed to be a juggernaut, but they're top 50 in Ken Palm. It's a legitimate program. They're going to have some athletes, some talent there. So you can certainly lose that if you don't show up. It'd be great to get that W. They're playing at home, actually. I think I said in the post game. I'm sorry, I got nailed for that. I was thinking U.S. Bank Arena again.
Yeah, right.
Thank God we don't have to do that again. That is the number one, the worst day of the year for me.
Seriously.
Is when we go to Heritage Bank. So it's going to be actually at Fifth Third. I guess we're doing a home and home now. But yeah, the out of conference slate is awesome. And Louisville looks like they got 4 NBA players on that team. So I was talking about our NBA talent. That is going to be tough, and that's on November 21st. So that's coming right around the corner, too. So I think we're going to find out what this team has, and I'm sure they'll face a little bit of adversity here, which I think is good in the non-con.
You look at this team and you watch them play, and it's new guys all over the place, and then you're like, oh, Day-Day, he's still out there and he's still playing. I think his role is going to be significantly different this year. Obviously, last year he's your leading scorer. I think we'd all be shocked if that was the case here this year. What does his role look like here this year with this team? How is it different maybe from last year?
Yeah, just being that veteran leader, he knows the system. It is going to be drastically different, though. And I think he's still trying to find his way. He shot 11 attempts. That was, second most on the team. I don't think that's going to be his role. I don't think that's what Wes Miller wants him to do. Last year, it was really the Jizzle and Day-Day show.
Right.
It was a lot of isolation ball with those guys, and our offense was terrible, just to put it frankly. But, yeah, I think he's going to find his groove. I'm sure there's going to be nights where he goes for 20. The guy can get hot. There's no doubt about that. And he's always going to be a great defender. I think that's probably his biggest role right now is to guard. They're the opposing point guards, getting their grill, make them uncomfortable, because we're going to see a lot of really, really good guard play once we get into Big 12. So I think that'll be his role. I don't think it's going to be the scoring thing, but he shot 40% from 3 last year. I hope that we can see that continue this year, because that was a huge break for us. Did not anticipate him to do that. So hopefully he can keep that going for this season, because I think that would be huge for this team.
Sincere Harris off the bench, was at Illinois, was at West Virginia. He was kind of, for someone like me that doesn't follow the program super closely, he kind of flew under the radar a little bit and then wasn't out there for a ton. I know he had the wrist. We'll talk about that in a second. But the athleticism just completely jumped out at me. He had the 3 steals, and it was pretty easy work really on those steals. And he's got some great bounce to him there as well. What do you think his role could be going forward? And is there an update on the wrist? Is this something that could potentially linger for a while, or what have we heard on that?
Yeah, so the x-rays were negative on the wrist. We'll touch on that first, which is a good thing. But it sounds like he was having trouble moving. It sounded like it was pretty significant sprain.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's not something that takes him out for like 6 weeks. Because, yeah, Buck Harris, man, I've watched, 3 games of this kid?
Mm-hmm.
He is a menace out there. I mean, he is awesome. I think he's one of our best players. I think he's going to be super important. He's one of the best defenders in the country, let alone the Big 12. I wish he would have maybe pumped the brakes a little bit against Western Carolina. He was flying all over the place. He was getting drilled on layups. He finished a nice and one, but I'm like, dude, it's Western Carolina. I appreciate the effort, but don't get hurt. Lo and behold, he hurts his wrist, tries to shoot a free throw, and hits it off the top of the backboard, and he comes out of the game. So I think he's going to be a massive piece. And his offense, that's where he struggles, is shooting the ball. I think he shot 15% from 3 last season, which isn't ideal for a wing player like he is. But his free throw percentages are solid. So hopefully he can figure out at least shooting a competent 3-point shot, and at least somebody has to get a hand up a little bit. But the guy's offense has looked much better than I anticipated. He's getting to the rack. He's doing a lot of slashing, the little stuff. But Buck Harris, he might be my favorite player on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that a lot of people have made a lot about this is, the speed that UC's playing with. They're playing quick. They're getting up and down the floor, and that was kind of a big talking point here this offseason. We saw that a little bit in Game 1, but also you couple it with the shooting. I mean, they've got multiple guys that can shoot the rock, and I feel like you haven't really had that in recent years with West, where it's like, okay, there's multiple guys out there that can make a clutch shot when you need it, and obviously when conference play, you're going to need that. What do you think just kind of about the shooting and how it seems like there's several guys that maybe you can rely on to hit big-time shots?
There is, and a lot of these guys are proven shooters now. Sean Abayev, we'll see what his 3-point shot looks like. I know he shot a ton of them in high school at a high clip, but we'll see when we get into real competition if he can hit those shots. So far, so good. I said this same thing last year though, and we had proven guys. It was Lukosius, Connor Hickman, the guy shoots 40%. C.J. Frederick. We got a lot of shooters on this team, and we turned out to be abysmal from the 3-point line. I think that this team is different. I mean, even guys coming off the bench like a Celestine, I mean, he's been playing forever as well. He was over at Baylor. He shot. That's all he shoots is threes. I think he's going to be important, like Jordy Rodriguez off the bench. And, like I said, Day Thomas. Baba can shoot. We saw Mustafa Cham hit a 3 against Western Carolina. You get a 7-footer. I don't think Aziz Bandego was making many of those shots last year. So, yeah, I think if they can just get in the top, 150, I'm not asking for a lot, Wes, in 3-point percentage. He hasn't had a team that's done that his entire career so far at UC, which is really abysmal. We've been on the bottom tier of the Big 12. And as we know, the 3-point shot actually counts for a little bit more than a 2. So it's nice when you make some of those. But with this roster, man, it'd be hard for me to fathom that they're not a above average 3-point shooting team, which is all we really need with our defensive prowess I think we're going to have.
Let's talk a little bit about Cham, Mustafa. We talked about, potentially a big 3, right, and Mustafa being a part of that. He comes in from UCF, right? He was there for 1 year. Is that right? And what not to put you on the spot here, but is there a guy, maybe a player comp that that Cham reminds you of a little bit? What can you expect from him throughout the course of a year? Because obviously he's got that height, which is really big time. And to compete in the Big 12, you need at least one guy to hold it down there in the middle. He can be that guy. But what are some of his other strengths? And if there's a player comp that comes to the top of your head, who would that be?
Yeah, we were actually shooting this around in the group chat, trying to think of a player comp for Mustafa Cham, because he can shoot the 3-ball, but that's certainly not his game. We threw out the name Walker Kessler, if you remember him over at Auburn, who's playing for the Jazz now, because his block percentage is one of the highest you'll see. And Walker Kessler's was even higher. I mean, the guy had 6 block shots a game. But if you could be something like that, and Kessler's much better on the boards as well, so hopefully Mustafa can get better there. But he's a great rim protector, and he can stretch the floor a little bit, which you love to see as a big man. And he's got some pretty nice touch. You can tell he's not a finished product by any means. You can tell he's still raw, but he's hitting a couple of fadeaways that we've seen so far this year, some back-to-the-basket moves that UC's desperately needed over the last few years. So he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything, and he can catch the lob really well. We saw a couple of them even against Western Carolina where the lobs really weren't good passes, and he's still able to get up there and finish it at his size and athleticism. So I'm really excited. I know we kind of pulled a rabbit out of the hat. I did not anticipate
Right.
Mustafa Cham coming to UCF. We snagged their assistant coach to bring him with us as a package deal. But I'm really excited. He's probably the best center we've had in a really long time. I'm thinking, maybe Yancey Gates is the next guy that comes to mind as far as the 5 spot. So I'm really excited about what he can do.
Reed was talking about this on Off the Bench. It seems like there's kind of a shift for how people in the fan base view Wes versus how they view Scott Satterfield. I think Wes always gets us all on board, and then towards the end of the year we start to get a little bit frustrated, and then we're all on board again, whereas Satterfield, it seems like nobody really ever believes that he could be the answer. I would like to know if you potentially agree with that, your thoughts on that, and where are we at with Wes here? Like, does he need to make the tournament in order to stick around, or what's kind of just the outlook on Wes Miller here in 25?
Oh yeah, he absolutely needs to make the tournament, and even if he gets in it as the last at large bid or something, that would still kind of piss me off. We need to be a legitimate team that is firmly in the tournament. I think for it, and we know with the AD, I think if he makes the tournament, he will keep his job. At least you're moving in the right direction. He's done a great job at re-hauling this entire roster. We just, at this point, the talk is enough. We need to see him do it on a basketball court. And I know he's run into a couple things that you don't love to see in your, with Buck Harris getting hurt, with Jalen Haynes getting hurt before the season started, with Jizzle James leaving. Nothing's ever easy. And, he had some obstacles to even start the season. But he still has the roster that can certainly compete. And it's just about X's and O's, man. Can this guy coach basketball? Because it seems like he's got the roster every year. And then, you see guys leave, and so far they're doing great. Dan Skilling's had 20 in his debut. We had Arrington Page at Northwestern have 18 and 10. So at some point, you got to use the players on your roster and win basketball games. So, yeah, I think it's a make or break. Wes Miller has to make the tournament, or we're going to start a GoFundMe and pay that buyout.
Great stuff here, Hudson Klauke joining us, talking some UC Bearcats. Before we let you go, Hudson, got to ask you a couple of football questions. We'll get to the UC football team here in a second, but obviously yesterday, NFL trade deadline, or actually on Tuesday, NFL trade deadline, former Bearcat Sauce Gardner, he gets moved to the Indianapolis Colts, 2 first-round picks in the process. I was a little bit caught off guard by that. Thought that was maybe a little bit too much for Indianapolis, but obviously he's going to reunite with former Bearcat teammate Alec Pierce. What are your thoughts on that trade for Indianapolis?
I'm a Colts fan now, man.
Yeah,
it's simple as that. They got the Alec Pierce and Sauce Gardner. The Bengals are in disarray. Hey, let's root for. They're not too far away, Indianapolis. It's awesome, man. You know who could have used the lockdown corner? The Bengals. Yeah. Did we flirt with that trade idea? I don't know. But yeah, I think it's awesome, man. Those two together, that's going to be cool to see, and he's obviously incredible. So.
And we've kind of danced around this here to this point. Obviously, you see the Utah game that did not go according to plan, to say the least. Where are you at here with the Cats as they pick up the pieces here, bye week, and then Arizona, and then what's going to be a huge game against BYU? Obviously, you're probably not as high on them as you were going into the Utah game, but it's still everything's kind of in front of them, right? You can still get to the Big 12 championship if you win some of these games. Where are you at here with the football program?
Yeah, let's look at it in a little bit of context, right?
Yeah.
If we got 3 Big 12 games left and we're tied for second in the conference, we control our own destiny. If we would have looked back in hindsight and said that's where we'll be on, the beginning of November, sure, everybody would say, absolutely, this is fantastic. Credit to Scott Satterfield. It stings a little bit when you do a college game day performance and, you're on ESPN and you just have one of the worst performances. I did not anticipate that. I knew Utah was a good team, especially at home at night. But to come out the way we did, and our Heisman guy, Brendan Sorsby, completes 11 passes, and 30% completion rate, not ideal, especially when I was talking about that he should be, front runner Heisman. So it came back to bite me a little bit. But, throw it out the window. It's Utah at night. We don't do well at 10:15 Eastern, all right? That's all I got to say about it. The altitude maybe impacted it. Who knows? But they got Arizona. I think they beat Arizona. And then you're potentially looking at a home game against BYU. If they beat Texas Tech this weekend, that's a top 5 team coming into Nippert Stadium. So I think that's exciting. Odds that they actually win all 3, probably not super high, but it's still there, man. I still believe.
All right, big one here this week in the Big 12, and I know the Cats will have their close eye on that. Texas Tech, BYU. BYU ranked higher than Texas Tech, but Texas Tech, I believe last I looked, 10.5-point favorites in that game. Any immediate thoughts there on that matchup? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I think just playing at home, Tech. I think Texas Tech might be the better team, as is BYU. Very solid. It's hard to argue. They're undefeated. I think they're going to get exposed a little bit against a really, really good Texas Tech team, but I've been wrong before. I think I took money line UC against Utah, so take that for what it is. But, yeah, I expect Texas Tech to win that game. And, honestly, it'd probably help us if BYU wins just from a standings standpoint, and then, Texas Tech would have 2 losses. So, I guess we're technically rooting for BYU to win that. But, yeah, I think Tech takes it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that there as well. Hudson Klauke, appreciate you. Let everybody know, where can we find you on social media? Got any live streams coming up? Fill us all in on what you got coming down the pipe.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's Hudson Keene, Keyne. It's my middle name for those that are like, what the hell is he talking about? Find me on Twitter there. Chatterbox Bearcats YouTube page, also Chatterbox Sports. We do live shows after every game, and then we do some midweek shows, other content throughout the week. So for sure, like and subscribe wherever you can. Throw some comments out there too.
Yes.
I notice all the comments always come from the opposing fan bases. Let's get some UC comments in there. Let's get the algorithm pumping a little bit. But, yeah, appreciate it.
There we go. I love it. Hudson, I appreciate you as always, and let's do it again soon, brother, all right?
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. Hudson Klauke, tremendous. As always, we appreciate him stopping by. Great stuff on the UC Bearcats. I'm excited about Bearcat basketball. I think there's a lot to be excited about. Hopefully we can get Hudson. Let's do that every week. I mean, that's just great stuff there on the Bearcats from Hudson Klauke. That interview will be up on YouTube later in the day. And, of course, you can check it out in podcast form there as well, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, iHeart, Spotify. You name it, you can find it. Great stuff. Hudson Klauke. All right, let's talk here about Matt LaFleur as we kind of transition a little bit here away from Cincinnati. There's been some buzz out there that Matt LaFleur is potentially on the hot seat as it relates to his job as the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, and it kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. I think it's a lot of smoke but no fire, to be completely honest with you. Look, when you look at what has transpired this year for the Green Bay Packers, this is a team that I picked to go to the Super Bowl, right? I had very high expectations for this team, and they've come in and they've lost some games that they shouldn't lose, right? I mean, the Cleveland Brown game early on, what are you doing there? Just not being able to get your offense going, albeit against a really good defense in the Cleveland Browns, but had plenty of opportunities there, and then a horrible turnover from Love late in the game, deep in his own territory, and boom, you lose that game. It's like, all right, whatever, that happens. And then, you tie the Dallas Cowboys, your defense, which, has been a struggle for Green Bay in recent years, but Jeff Hafley's come in. He's done a tremendous job. He's kind of stabilized that unit. By the way, I think Hafley, he should be looked at as a potential head coach here, whether it be this cycle or a cycle here in the near future. The Bengal job becomes open. That's a guy that I've got my eye on, by the way. But then you give up a ton of points there against Dallas, which is a good offense, and you walk away with a tie, which kind of obviously a sour taste in your mouth. That doesn't feel very good to come away with a tie there in that spot. And then here this past week, you lose to the Carolina Panthers. And I understand when you're a good team with good, with Super Bowl aspirations and expectations like the Green Bay Packers have, when you go all in on your season, when you trade multiple first-round picks for Micah Parsons, pay him as well. You need to win, and you can't lose to teams you shouldn't be losing to, and that's probably why there is some noise surrounding Matt LaFleur. But the bottom line is he's been great since he came in here, right? There was questions about, how good really was he? Because you come in here and you got Aaron Rodgers, who's still at an MVP level. Well, mind you, those 2 MVPs there that Rodgers won at the end, that's with LaFleur, right? He deserves a lot of credit for that. Aaron Rodgers there, those 2 years, was playing tremendous football. And then you had, the decision in the NFC Championship game, the COVID year against Tampa. A lot of people are going to always give him crud for that, especially if he doesn't find a way to win a world championship. Not giving Rodgers an opportunity there on 4th down and kicking it. That's a horrible mistake, and people are always going to talk about it unless he ultimately hoists the Vince Lombardi trophy. But when you have a good coach in place and a guy that has a good culture and that has a good offensive mind and is a good play caller and has done tremendous work with the quarterbacks, it's tough to move off Because there's a lot of misses in this league when it comes to head coaches in the NFL, and LaFleur simply is not one. Now, the expectations here this year, he can't go one and done, right? I mean, nobody's even talking about them potentially missing the playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to be a playoff team. To be honest with you, I think they're going to win on Monday night against Philly. And I believe they are favorites in that game there as well. But there's a lot of pressure here. When you make a move as a front office, you go out there and you get Micah Parsons. That's a huge move. That's a huge move. And you're seeing this with Indianapolis there as well. Whereas if you trade multiple first-round picks, the expectation is that you're going to win football games and you're going to be deep in the playoffs and in NFC championship games and competing for Super Bowls. And, that's kind of the move. The pressure just turned all the way up on the Indianapolis Colts because they just gave away 2 first-round picks. A year that was going to be a terrific success no matter what. Now all of a sudden you give up 2 first-round picks, kind of go all in. A lot more pressure on Indianapolis. Kind of the same case here in Green Bay. I thought they were going to be a team that could compete for a world championship even without Micah Parsons. Oh, you got arguably one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League, and you gave up multiple first-round picks in the process, and you gave him an extension. Well, you better win. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation when you lose to a Carolina Panther team like they just did, a team that's notoriously been literally the worst team in the NFL for what feels like several years. They've found a way this year. They've won some games. Canales deserves some credit for that, but that's why they've kind of turned up, I think, the pressure cooker a little bit there in Green Bay. And a lot of it has to do with his contract there, right? Because you don't see these coaches in the NFL really be sitting ducks, right? LaFleur, after this year, he's hoping for an extension this offseason because it would be a lame duck contract if he went into the 26th year without a new deal. Nobody really does that. McCarthy obviously did it in Dallas, and then he was gone. Coaches don't like to operate like that here in the National Football League this day and age. He's going to want an extension here this offseason, and it's going to be tough for Green Bay to give it to him if they don't even win a playoff game, right, after going out there and trading for Micah Parsons. But when you're at as an organization where Green Bay is at, and you have a foundation in place, and you have really good players, I think it's a mistake to make a change at the head coaching spot. And that's kind of where I'm at with Cincinnati, to be honest with you. It's like you've got Joe Burrow, you've got T. Higgins, you've got Jamar Chase. Offensively, you are there. The defense obviously stinks, and the offensive line obviously has been an issue there as well. But I'm not, I think that's why I'm hesitant to move off Zach Taylor, one of the many reasons why I am. It's like, no, you went all in on those 3 guys. Now you're going to get rid of the head coach that has kind of overseen their development and their growth and the whole process of how they've gotten to this point. I think it's a mistake. Same here for Green Bay, right? Matt LaFleur deserves a ton of credit for what has gone on with Jordan Love. And Jordan Love, I'm a big Jordan Love guy. I think he checks all the boxes. Does he make a couple of silly turnovers? Yeah, but, he's a big dude. Can see over the line of scrimmage really well, finds his playmakers, has a huge arm, which you need in the playoffs when the weather gets cold, especially in Green Bay when the weather is freezing. And Jordan Love can absolutely chuck it. And it's kind of got that effortless power to his throws that, Aaron Rodgers, of course, had for so many years in Green Bay there as well. But I think LaFleur deserves a lot of credit for the growth and development of Jordan Love and where he's at as an NFL quarterback here this year. And I think he's again, he's made some mistakes, but I look at him as a top-tier guy. He's not, Burrow, Jackson, Mahomes, Allen. Let's not get carried away here, but he's a really good quarterback and a quarterback that is good enough to win a world championship. I don't see how you could kind of sit there and say, well, we just kind of went all in here, paying the quarterback. We just traded for this guy that's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, gave up multiple picks, gave him a big contract. Not giving LaFleur an extension after this year, in my opinion, would be a big-time mistake. But if you continue to lose some games against teams that you shouldn't lose to and, don't win a playoff game, right? And even if you win one playoff game, like it feels like after you make a move like that, you got to get in the NFC Championship if you're the Green Bay Packers. And we'll see. They've got a lot of difficult games on their schedule, right? Obviously we know about that division, right? They still have to go to Detroit, which that's becoming one of the best home field advantages in the National Football League, and that's certainly very noteworthy there as well. And we'll see how they can handle things against Detroit. And obviously Philly this week. Philly had a bit of a rough stretch there, and then they've clearly bounced back from that, and they look like a really good team. Howie Roseman, of course, made some moves. That's going to be a banger of a game on Monday Night Football. I think we're all pretty fired up about that. But there's some difficult games here on their schedule, and they've lost. It's one thing if you're losing to good teams, right? That's going to happen in this league. You're not going to win every game. But if you're losing to the Browns and the Panthers and tying the Cowboys, that's a serious, serious issue, and we'll see if they can bounce back. They've always been good at elevating their performance against really good teams, right? But they've kind of stooped down to their level of competition, at least here in 2025, and it's cost them some football games. And now all of a sudden there's some buzz around LaFleur and his job. But keep in mind, this organization in Green Bay, it is one of the most stable organizations in all of sports, right? All they do is win, right? Obviously, it's well documented what they've done from a quarterback position. Favre, Rodgers, Love. I mean, come on. It doesn't get any better than that. That is just years and years and years of elite quarterback play. You don't have owners that, of course, meddle, right? Obviously, a large chunk of the fan base is there doing that. Gooden, Kunster, however you say his name, the GM, he's done a really nice job there as well. And look, if this job, by the way, does come open, this has got to be one of the most coveted jobs in the NFL, right? Because you get a really stable organization with owners that aren't going to meddle. The media, it's just a nice, friendly, local Green Bay media, right? And it's a history of winning, and you play at Lambeau Field. This would be a huge opening if it became opened. But in my opinion, they need to give him an extension this offseason. But that conversation gets a little bit more difficult if you're one and done in the postseason. All right, I don't like doing this time of year. All right, when it's November 6th and you're talking mock draft, that's not good, because that means your team is in a really, really bad spot. And obviously we know the Cincinnati Bengals are in a really, really bad spot. There's going to be a ton of mock drafts that come out. They've been coming out. People do them year-round, right? It's a fun exercise to do. Take a look at mock drafts. We'll probably run through a couple on our show here when the season's actually over. And, we'll run it through the PFF system and go through all the Bengals picks, and we'll go back and forth on that. But it did kind of I saw this one that was released by The Athletic this morning, and I thought it was interesting. And there's a couple things that we will talk about in the draft, a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals, and then we'll keep it pushing. We're not going to go through all 32 selections. But the number one overall pick, and they have the New York Jets taking the number one overall pick, who, of course, yes, they came to Cincinnati and won a couple of weeks ago. That obviously is not a good situation. But Arvell Reese is who they have as number one overall. And some people might say, that's a little aggressive. I don't think so, right? Now, if you see something from Simpson or Mendoza and they go on to win the national title and play great football at the end of the year, I think that'll switch. But for now, who? You want him or Ruben Bain? Ruben Bain's a great player. He'll be a good NFL player, but I'll take Arvell Reese, right? You talk about Caleb Downs being a Swiss Army knife, and you can line him up wherever you want to line him up. Arvell Reese is the same, right? He wants to play linebacker? That's fine. You need to line him up against somebody in a coverage standpoint? Fine. You want him to rush the passer? Fine. I don't know how an NFL team will utilize him. All I know is that he is going to be a terrific NFL player. I think if you add some weight to him, he could literally be Micah Parsons. He's that good. But I also think if he stays at his current size, he has a little bit more flexibility. This is a guy that I think you can line up on the edge. I think you could line him up over the center there as well, and he'll get home. This is an elite athlete. Obviously, Ohio State's not doing that here at this point, but, there was a lot made of Ohio State. It's like, well, what are they going to do here? How are they going to look with several of their big-time studs leaving last year's team they have to replace? Well, Arvell Reese had been here, and if you pay attention to Ohio State, you saw this coming, because he is an absolute dog. And, I think the world of Sonny Styles there as well, but it was really, once the Texas game happened, it was like, yeah, Sonny's great, but let's be clear here, the best linebacker is Arvell Reese. And, of course, Sonny was playing over Arvell Reese last year. So I think the dialogue about him potentially being the number one overall pick, that's not crazy. That is not crazy. And, again, at the NFL level, I think you're going to see a little bit more pass rush. He's not just going to be he's taking a linebacker first overall. That's just a linebacker. That's a bit aggressive, right? But if it's a guy that's also basically an edge rusher and you can line him up in different spots, he can be a Swiss Army knife, could very well be the next Micah Parsons. I got no issues taking Arvell Reese number one overall in the draft. Ruben Bain, they had it too. Edge guy from Miami. We were talking about him as potentially being a difference maker for the Canes in the playoffs, but next thing you know, they have 2 losses, and it's same old Miami, same stuff, different year for them. Caleb Downs had him going at 5 for Ohio State. I think he's the best player in college football, and I just said that Arvell Reese might go number one overall, so that tells you how highly I think of Caleb Downs. He struggled a little bit against Penn State, made a couple dumb decisions, which you don't really see. He got lucky on the play at the end of the game where it was clearly targeting, and they kept him in the game, and they didn't say it was targeting. Not really sure how that happened. Had a really bad angle there on a tackle when Penn State scored a touchdown in the first half. That's one thing that you never see. Caleb Downs. I don't know if I've ever seen him take a bad angle. I don't know if he's ever taken one in his life until that moment in the first half against Penn State, so that was a little bit strange. If I'm Ohio State, I would have him be the punt returner. I don't know why he's not. They throw Ennis back there. I don't know if they use him still a little bit, but he's the perfect punt returner. I would use him there in that role, but I think a lot of people in Cincinnati were hoping that he could potentially fall. 5 for a safety seems high, but this is a can't miss guy. You have guys in the first round that are taken where it's like, okay, he is going to be a really good NFL player regardless of where he goes. And Arvell Reese is certainly that guy. Caleb Downs is also that guy. You talk so much about fit in the NFL, especially at the quarterback position, but Caleb Downs is plug and play, right? He could be playing in the NFL right now. Wherever you want to put him, he can be there. He will be elite wherever he is at. And I certainly would love him here in Cincinnati. 5 might be a little high. I could see him slipping to 8 or 9, and who knows? Maybe Cincinnati's picking at 8 or 9 here at that point. But Caleb Downs is a guy that could come in and completely change the trajectory of your defense. And to be honest with you, he's a guy that I would trade up for. Cincinnati obviously doesn't do that. But if you're in a spot where you're picking and you're thinking, you know what, we're probably 3-4 picks too late as far as getting Caleb Downs, I'm making a move to go up there and get him because he can really if you added Caleb Downs to this defense right now, if Caleb Downs was out there and not Geno Stone, this defense would look totally different. Make no mistake about it. And he's an elite tackler there as well. I mean, Bengals don't have anybody on their defense that could tackle. Caleb Downs come in there, be the best tackler immediately. First quarterback off the board here was Fernando Mendoza. The Athletic has him going 6 overall to Vegas. I'm not fully in on Mendoza yet. He's going to play in some big-time games coming up, and I'm really excited to watch him go. Indiana's a great football team. They're great in the trenches. They can run the ball. They got 2 of the best receivers in the country there as well. Mendoza's been great, and you hear that he's made of the right stuff, and he is a workaholic. I understand all that, but it's hard for me to think he's better than Ty Simpson at this point. And, if Ty Simpson has a strong start to the year, I just think he can do a lot more athletically. And Ty Simpson looks more like an NFL guy because he can move around a little bit more than Mendoza. So I'm not as high on Mendoza yet. But if you're in a spot where they beat the crud out of Penn State this week and they keep it pushing and then hang in there or even beat Ohio State, make a long run in the playoff, maybe that could change. But at this point, I'm not ready to put Mendoza above Ty Simpson as my quarterback 1. I think he's more in conversation with Dante Moore as the second quarterback here in this year's class. But, look, a lot can happen, right? And we see it. Guys will skyrocket up the draft board if they make a run in the playoff or they play really well in the conference championship game. We see that stuff each and every year, even at the quarterback position. And we'll see if that's the case for any of these other quarterbacks. Like if Oregon goes on this run and wins the national title, Dante Moore might be quarterback 1 in the draft. I think that's a real possibility there as well. Cincinnati, they had him picking. The Athletic has him picking at 7. So, I mean, I'm in a spot where it's like, obviously I'm not a draft guru, but if I'm the Bengals picking at 7, I think there's a chance Caleb Downs goes before 7, trade up and get him, right? Absolutely trade up and get him if you think you have an opportunity to do that. But the Athletic has the Bengals taking a tackle, an offensive tackle, which is interesting. Again, we're having this conversation on November 6th. Quite frankly, it's embarrassing we're having this conversation on November 6th, but that's just when you're a 3-6 team on a bye week. That's, we're going to do that. I mean, your mind says, no, you have to take a defensive player there at number 7 overall. But if it's Duke Tobin making the decision, do you have any confidence in him being able to execute, even if you're picking at 7? Let's say you're picking at 7, and Bain, Downs, and Reese are all gone. Do you have faith that Duke Tobin is going to make the right selection at number 7 overall? I know I certainly do not. I think the Mims, has he been perfect this year? No. Has he struggled this year? You can look at the PFF grades for linemen. I'm not going to sit here and study PFF grades of offensive linemen. I'm just not going to do it. The eye test tells me that he's been good in spots, he's been not so good in spots, and that he'll be fine and that he will get a second contract. That's what my eye test tells me for Amarius Mims. But you need another tackle, right? You need more depth, right? I mean, we were talking about it off the bench. Yeah, the offensive line, they've done a little bit better job here in recent weeks. Well, we've been healthy in recent weeks. What happens if Mims goes down? Well, you're in trouble once again. So, Francis Mauigoa, I just butchered the heck out of that name. Apologies there. But Francis M. from Miami, I've heard about, him being a top-of-the-line type draft pick. I think him and Caden Proctor are probably the 2 guys that you think about for the first tackle taken in the draft. You need to protect Joe Burrow, but if you just don't pick defense there in the first round, I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because I tell you what, Shamar Stewart, he ain't going to be any good, right? That's a bust, right? Chris Jenkins Jr., he doesn't look like he's going to be any good. They're your second-round pick. So, I think you get in trouble if you don't go best player available route. You find yourself in trouble. But Cincinnati, they didn't go best player available this past year's draft, and they got in trouble. So I don't know. I mean, if that tackle's there and you think he's the best player, you probably take him. But here we go again, right? If you're not even going to allocate a top-of-the-line resource to taking a defensive player there in the first round. But this is just what the Athletic has. Ty Simpson, they have quarterback 2 behind Mendoza, have him at 8 going to the Cleveland Browns. You better not pick before Cleveland, right? You better not pick before Cleveland. I mean, come on. You better not pick before the Cleveland Browns here in this year's draft. But they had Simpson going 8. I think he'll be eventually, the quarterback 1 in this class. But we'll see. Carnell Tate, another Buckeye. They got 3 Ohio State guys in the top 10 here. I don't think that's hyperbolic. Carnell Tate's clearly a first-round guy. He's gradually climbing those boards as he continues to make great catches. I feel like he's probably like a 15 here at this point. 10 feels a little rich, but we'll see as it relates to that. Jeremiah Love, they have a running back going off the board at 12. Bengals obviously have no need for running backs. They got 2 Clemson Tigers at 13 and 14. Terrell, the corner, Peter Woods, the DT. And just a swing and a miss from Dabo this year. It was a team that had national title expectations coming into the year, and obviously they have fallen dreadfully short of those. Also, T.J. Parker, another guy that's in the first round here out of Clemson. We all said this going into the season, that Clemson was going to have 2, 3, 4 first-round picks, and looks like that's going to be the case. I still think that's going to be the case, and you were a terrible football team here this year, and obviously that's not good. Not good at all. But a little mock draft coverage there. Don't like doing it this time of year, but I did think it was noteworthy that Reese was going number 1. I'm honestly here for it, and the Bengals taking a tackle at 7, according to The Athletic. We'll end with this. Kyler Murray has been placed on IR. Don't kid yourself here. He's not on IR. I mean, he is technically, but this is a benching for Kyler Murray. And look, the regime that's in place right now with Gannon wasn't a Kyler Murray guy, right? You see that a lot in this league. When you have head coach, GM, they come into a situation and there's a quarterback in place that they didn't draft, there's hesitancy there when it comes to being loyal to them. Perfect example, Sean Payton in Denver. He was out on Russell Wilson before Russell Wilson played a single game with the Denver Broncos. And, they gave Kyler Murray a shot. They had to, right? He's making, don't know off the top of my head, but $45 million, which is just absurd. Kyler Murray's a guy that can't stay healthy, can't see over the line of scrimmage, and is, by all accounts, not a very good teammate and not a very good leader. And great talent, taken at number 1 overall. But he's just not a franchise quarterback. Throws a beautiful ball, throws a great deep ball, but has had injuries with the health, the leadership, can't win games, right? And now all of a sudden, the worst thing that could happen for Kyler Murray is when he goes out, they look better without him. And that's exactly the case here. Jacoby Brissett, he is a career backup, right? He is not a starter. And when the offense looks that much better with your backup, you got real issues. And a guy that is a Gannon guy and a part of their regime is Marvin Harrison Jr., who all of a sudden, he's got a pulse. All of a sudden, that looks like a guy that was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And when he kind of gets unlocked, then Gannon and those guys are sitting there going, that's our guy. Where's that been? Kyler Murray. He was the quarterback and not Brissett. So I think it's done for Kyler in Arizona. We'll see. I think, he's not going to get traded, right? Because a team's not going to want to pay that kind of contract. I think it's very much heading in the direction of him getting cut, him getting released here after the year. And, we'll see. We've seen, obviously, quarterbacks, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, they get cut, they get moved off of, and they land in a better spot, and they have opportunity to be successful, and they make a career out of it. Look, Baker and Sam Darnold, 2 of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. I have my reservations on whether Kyler can do it, and it sounds lame to sit up here and say this, but the dude is just not tall enough. He can't see. He's got no clue what's going on. And, I don't know. It's just kind of a... when you pay the quarterback and you miss, you're in a tough spot. And Arizona's been in a tough spot here for several years, but now we're seeing teams rip the Band-Aid off. And you know what? They paid a quarterback a bunch of money. Well, it's not working. We'll just round it off and we'll move on and eat it. And, even if it's a big cap hit, which I know Kyler's a big cap hit there as well, but, that's what the Broncos obviously did with Russell Wilson, and it's working out very well for them. And we'll see if the Dolphins end up doing with Tua. I think the Cardinals need to do it here with Kyler Murray. Who knows? Maybe he responds. The team's going to pick him up, right? He's going to get a 1-year contract. I don't know, $10, $12 million, and he'll get an opportunity to be like a bridge guy. And if he shows out, maybe he'll make a career for himself again as a quarterback. But there's some people that have been talking about his return to baseball, which I don't know if he's going to do that, right? I mean, it would be fun to watch because this isn't like Tim Tebow's situation or a Michael Jordan situation. Like Kyler Murray was a dog at baseball. Like was he second overall pick? It was something absurd for the Oakland A's. I don't remember where exactly he was taken, but this was a really, really, really good baseball player. That wasn't like, oh, he just did that on the side and he thought it was fun. No, Kyler Murray was a dog at playing baseball. So obviously not as much money in baseball, and after you make $100 million or whatever Kyler Murray has made, it's tough to be a minor league baseball player and you're traveling on buses. I don't think Kyler's going to necessarily sign up for that here at this point. I think he'll give it a try with another team, but Kyler Murray doesn't strike me as a backup quarterback, right? It kind of feels like a Cam Newton, where it's like Cam Newton, he's too big of a name, has too much ego, and has been in the league as a starter too long to just be a backup. Like that didn't work with Cam Newton being the backup. He was no longer a starter. He was out of the league. I don't think Kyler is going to be a backup quarterback in the NFL, but I do think another team will give him a shot to be a starter. But if that doesn't work, then maybe you're talking about him playing baseball, which would be a heck of a story. Because, again, not Tim Tebow, not Michael Jordan. Like, this is a real baseball player, or was. But then, obviously, it's been a long, long time since he played baseball. So that would be very interesting to see if he returned to baseball. But he's done in Arizona. I think you're right with Brissett. And you either try to hit in free agency, pay a veteran guy. I don't think you can stick with Brissett beyond this year, or draft a guy and see what you can do there. But the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. has become unlocked, I think, is a telltale sign that, it's time to be done with Kyler Murray. All right, that'll do it here on a Thursday. Appreciate everybody stopping by. We'll be back tomorrow with our Friday show. We'll have our college football weekend preview. Looking forward to that. We will have our best bets of the weekend. Looking forward to that. And the plan is that we will have Richard Skinner here from Local 12 to talk Cincinnati Bengals. That is the plan on tomorrow's show. If you missed any parts of today's show, obviously we'll have clips that go out on YouTube throughout the duration of the day. Be on the lookout for that. Big thanks, special shout out to Hudson Klauke for stopping by. A great conversation there on Bearcat Hoops. They got a game coming up tomorrow. Georgia State is the opponent, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit on tomorrow's show there as well. Appreciate everybody hanging out through us throughout the duration of the show as always, and we will be back tomorrow. But until then, take care, everybody.